This one looks perfect, just like you.
Oh, you're so sweet.
When a busy billionaire accidentally knocks the fruit from a woman's hands, their shared moment of picking it up blossoms into a beautiful love story. Hello, bestie. Please stay with me as I unfold this interesting romantic story. If you enjoy the story, please support us by subscribing to this channel and hit the notification button for more. Thank you. Grab your popcorn, sit back, relax, and enjoy this story. A collision of worlds, the air in the palms. Lecky hummed with quiet opulence. Kenechukwu Keen Obi, a man who built a tech empire from a single laptop, moved with an impatient stride, his focus on a high-stakes merger call. Adaora, a vibrant artist in an Ankara print dress, hummed a tune, carefully balancing a basket of fresh strawberries, a mango, and grapes. A treat after her successful exhibition. The collision was swift. Ken's swinging arm sent the basket flying, scattering the fruits like jewels on polished marble. A sharp apology died on his lips as he looked at her, not with anger but startled surprise. They bent down simultaneously, their hands brushing over a single strawberry. A jolt passed between them. His world of spreadsheets faded. All he saw were her gold-flecked eyes. Her laugh broke the tension. "It seems you've attacked my fruit." He, mesmerized, replied, "A most unprovoked assault. Please, let me make amends." The frantic energy of the collision faded, leaving a strange, intimate quiet in its wake. Ken's phone, now ignored on the marble floor, emitted a faint, tinny voice. "Keen? Ogami, are you there?" A ghost from the world he had just exited. He reached down and ended the call with a single, decisive tap, silencing the demands of a multimillion-dollar merger. The act felt symbolic. For the first time in years, someone had taken precedence. "Please allow me," he said, his voice softer now, stripped of its earlier impatience. He crouched again, his movements more deliberate. Adaora knelt beside him, the silk of her dress pooling around her. They were a study in contrasts. His sharp, tailored suit against her vibrant, flowing Ankara. His world of binary code and acquisitions against her world of color and emotion. Their hands moved in the space between them, carefully gathering the fallen fruit. His fingers, long and deft, hesitated near a strawberry that had rolled near her shoe. "I'm truly sorry about this," he said, his gaze lifting to meet hers. "I was on a call, distracted. There's no excuse for my clumsiness." A small smile played on Adaora's lips. "It's okay. They've survived a greater fall now. They're practically warriors." She picked up the mango, its skin still perfectly intact. "See? Not a bruise. They're resilient." He laughed, a genuine, warm sound that seemed to surprise even him. "Strawberry warriors. I like that." He held up the basket, now slightly dented. "This, however, seems to have borne the brunt of my assault. Replacement is non-negotiable." He stood and offered his hand to help her up. After a brief hesitation, she took it. His grip was firm, his skin warm against hers. "You really don't have to," she started. But he shook his head, a glint of charming determination in his eyes. "I insist. It's a matter of honor. I can't have it said that Kinobi goes around disarming ladies of their fruit and doesn't make amends." He led the way, not with arrogance, but with a natural assurance that was hard to refuse. They found a gourmet market tucked away in a corner of the mall, a haven of imported cheeses, artisan breads, and pristine, perfectly arranged produce. It was a far cry from the bustling markets Adaora was used to. Keen found a stack of identical wicker baskets and handed her one. "Now," he said, turning to the fruit section with the focus of a military strategist. "The strawberries. We need to find a battalion worthy of replacing your fallen warriors." He began examining punnets of strawberries with an intensity she found both amusing and endearing. He held one up to the light. "What's the criteria? Color? Fragrance? Size?" Adaora couldn't help but laugh. "I usually just smell them. If they smell like sunshine and sweetness, they're good." He looked at her, and the corporate intensity in his face melted into something softer. "Sunshine and sweetness," he repeated, as if Shed just revealed a profound secret. He picked up a pun net, inhaled deeply, and handed it to her. Well, does this pass the test? She took it, their fingers brushing again. A new, quieter jolt. She mimicked his serious expression. Adequate, but perhaps we should compare. She reached for another brand, and suddenly they were in a mock-serious strawberry evaluation, smelling and comparing until they both agreed on the most fragrant one. He then guided her to the mangoes, the king of fruits. This one, he said, picking up a ripe, golden yellow mango, is an Alfonso, incredibly sweet. But this, he selected a larger, greenish-red one, is a Nigerian Julie mango, the best in the world, in my completely unbiased opinion. Which was your original? The Julie, she said, touched that head ask. Julie it is. He placed it carefully in the basket. He was knowledgeable, not in a showy way, but with a genuine appreciation. He told her a story about climbing mango trees as a boy in his village in Enugu, and how the taste always brought him back there. The basket now full, he turned to her. A peace offering wouldn't be complete without a proper discussion of terms. There's a coffee shop just over there. Would you let me buy you a cup? So I can fully apologize for endangering your produce? The formality of his words was undercut by the hopeful, almost nervous look in his eyes. Edaora felt a thrill of anticipation. This was unexpected and fascinating. All right, she said, smiling, on the condition that we stop calling it an assault. It was an accident. A very fortunate accident, he murmured, so low she almost didn't hear it. They found a quiet table. He ordered a black Americano. She ordered a latte. And then they talked. The initial awkwardness evaporated like steam from their cups. He asked about her art, and he didn't just nod politely. He asked about her influences, her techniques, what she felt when she painted. He listened, his full attention on her, making her feel like the most fascinating person in the world. In turn, she asked about his work. He spoke not of wealth and deals, but of the excitement of building something, of the responsibility he felt to create opportunities for others in Nigeria. He spoke of his first computer, a second-hand dinosaur head saved for a year to buy, and the thrill of writing his first line of code. An hour slipped by, then two. The world outside the coffee shop faded. He made her laugh with a story about a disastrous presentation early in his career. She moved him by describing the painting Shed done after visiting Makoko for the first time, capturing the community's resilience on canvas. Finally, with a glance at his watch, a simple, elegant timepiece, not the bling she might have expected, he sighed. I have a meeting I can't reschedule, but I don't want this to be the end of the conversation. He reached into his inner pocket and retrieved a slim, silver card case. He extracted a single, stark white card. There was no title, no company logo, just a name, Kenechukwu Obi, and a single phone number embossed in black. He handed it to her. This is my private line. It goes directly to me. He paused, choosing his words carefully. In case your fruit ever needs avenging again. Or, if you'd simply like to continue this discussion. Edaora took the card. Her skin tingling where his fingers brushed hers. Felt like holding a secret. She didn't have a card to give in return. Instead, she took a pen from her bag, grabbed a napkin, and wrote her number down with a small, quick sketch of a strawberry next to it. She handed it to him. A direct line to me, in case you need an expert opinion on produce. He looked at the napkin, a slow, devastating smile spreading across his face. He tucked it into his wallet with a care usually reserved for important documents. They stood. For a moment, they just looked at each other. A silent acknowledgement of the strange, electric connection humming between them. Goodbye, Edaora, he said. Goodbye, Keen. She watched him walk away, his stride still purposeful, but somehow lighter. She looked down at the card in her hand, then at the basket of fruit on the table. Sunshine and sweetness, indeed. She had a feeling her world had just gotten a lot more interesting. The card felt like a live wire in her pocket. For 2 days, Edaora carried it with her, its stark simplicity a constant, tantalizing reminder of the man in the suit. She wasn't playing games. Her life was full and she was not the type to drop everything for a man, even a devastatingly handsome billionaire with surprisingly gentle hands. She was independent, proud, and cautious. The world of Akin Obi felt like a different galaxy, and she was unsure if she wanted to be pulled into its orbit. But she couldn't stop thinking about him. The way his intense focus had softened when he smelled the strawberries. The boyish embarrassment that had followed his clumsiness. The deep, resonant sound of his laugh. He was a paradox, a titan of industry who spoke of his humble beginnings with nostalgia, not shame. On the evening of the second day, she was in her studio. The scent of turpentine and oil paint a familiar comfort. She was attempting to work on a new piece, a chaotic splash of colors that refused to coalesce into a vision. Her focus was shot. With a sigh of exasperation, she put down her brush, pulled the card from her jeans pocket, and picked up her phone. She typed a message, deleted it, then typed another. She wanted to be clever, to be memorable. She thought of his formal apology, his charmingly old-fashioned phrasing. A smile touched her lips. Her fingers flew over the screen. The strawberries survived. The jury is still out on the man who assaulted them. She hit send before she could second-guess herself, her heart performing a funny little tap dance against her ribs. She placed the phone face down on her work table and tried to pick up her brush again, but her attention was irrevocably tethered to the silent device. The response was so immediate the phone vibrated against the wood, making her jump. The man is in a state of profound remorse. He awaits the jury's verdict with bated breath. A not guilty plea is entered, with an offer of restitution. Dinner? Adeora laughed aloud in the empty studio. His text voice was just like his real voice, formal yet playful underneath. She replied, her fingers feeling light and quick. Restitution accepted. The jury is inclined towards leniency. Dinner would be suitable. Name the time and place. Anywhere you like. He responded instantly. This was a test. He was a man who likely dined at the most exclusive, expensive restaurants in Victoria Island. She was an artist who loved a good roadside suya spot and cozy, hidden cafes with character. She decided to meet him on her own turf. "Do you trust me?" she texted back. Implicitly, the single-word reply sent a thrill through her. "Tomorrow, 8 p.m. They'll send you the address. It's not what you're used to. I look forward to being surprised." The address she sent him led to a small, family-owned Italian restaurant tucked away in a quiet street in Ikja GRA. It wasn't trendy or overly chic. It was warm, intimate, and known for its authentic, homely cooking. The walls were adorned with vintage Italian movie posters, and the air was thick with the glorious smell of garlic, baking bread, and simmering tomatoes. Adeora arrived first, wearing a simple but elegant navy blue dress. She was nervous, twisting the strap of her purse. Would he find it beneath him? Would he be annoyed she hadn't chosen someplace more impressive? Then he walked in. He filled the doorway, his broad shoulders and height seeming too large for the cozy space. He was dressed down, a dark, impeccably fitted cashmere sweater and tailored trousers, a world away from his formal suit but no less commanding. His eyes scanned the room, found her, and his entire face lit up with a smile that was pure, unadulterated pleasure. Any worry she had evaporated. He navigated the close-set tables with an easy grace, apologizing to an older couple as he passed. "You found it," she said as he reached the table. "My driver was confused, but I told him it was exactly the kind of place I wanted to be," he said, sitting down. He looked around, taking in the checkered tablecloths, the Chianti bottle candle holders, the cheerful noise. "This is perfect. It has soul. I'm tired of places that only have ambience." They ordered a simple spaghetti alle vongole for her, a osso buco for him, and a bottle of Chianti. The conversation didn't just pick up where it left off. It plunged deeper. He told her about the merger call head abandoned. "I lost the deal," he said, swirling his wine. "The other party thought I was being disrespectful. My board was furious." Adeora's hand flew to her mouth. "Keen, I'm so sorry. Because of me." He shook his head, a genuine lightness in his eyes. Don't be. It was the best decision I've made all year. That deal was a headache. It would have made us richer, but it wouldn't have made us happier. What I found instead was, he paused, his gaze holding hers. Infinitely more valuable. Her breath caught in her throat. Then he delivered his real surprise. I looked you up, he confessed, not sheepishly, but with open admiration. Edaora Nwosu, your exhibition was at the Ashidi Gallery. I went yesterday. She was stunned. You did? I did. I saw the piece you were working on that day. Lagos Sunrise. Breathtaking. He described the painting. The way Shed used bold, fiery strokes of orange and red over a cooler, chaotic blue background to capture the city waking up. Head seen the emotion in it, the struggle and the hope. Head understood it. I bought it, he said softly. You. What? She was speechless. Collectors bought her work, but they rarely saw the soul of it. They saw an investment or something that matched their sofa. I bought it, he repeated. It's being installed in the lobby of my penthouse. It's the first thing I want to see every morning. He leaned forward. It reminded me of you, all that fire and energy and beauty contained on one canvas. In that moment, surrounded by the clatter of plates and the murmur of other diners, Edaora felt something shift irrevocably inside her. He hadn't just seen the artist. Head seen her. And Head valued what he saw enough to make it a part of his daily life. The jury was no longer out. The verdict was in, and it was unanimous. She was completely, utterly captivated. The success of their first official date sparked a new, thrilling rhythm in their lives. Text messages became a constant, delightful thread woven through their days. A photo from Keen of a painfully boring spreadsheet captioned, "My world, dull without your colors." A quick sketch from Edaora of a mango with a tiny crown, texted with, "The king of fruits demands an audience." It was Keen who made the first move to truly intertwine their worlds. He called her on a Thursday evening. "There's a thing tomorrow night," he said, his voice casual. "A small opening at the Eco Gallery. A friend of mine is showcasing. I was wondering if you'd accompany me." Edaora's grip tightened on the phone. The Eco Gallery wasn't just any gallery. It was the epicenter of Lagos's high-end art scene, a place where small opening meant champagne flutes, international critics, and prices that could fund her studio for a year. This was his world. "I'd love to," she said, hoping her voice didn't betray her sudden nervousness. She spent an hour the next evening debating her outfit. She chose a creation of her own, a dress Shed designed and had made from a deep indigo Adire fabric, its patterns modern and geometric. It was elegant and uniquely her. When Ken's driver picked her up, Keen himself was in the back seat. He looked devastatingly handsome in a midnight blue agbada over tailored trousers, but his eyes widened when he saw her. "You look stunning," he said, his voice low and sincere. "That fabric is a masterpiece." "Thank you," she said, sliding in beside him. "I like to support local artists." He laughed, the sound rich and warm in the confines of the car.
Touché.
The gallery was everything Shed imagined and more. It was a soaring, white-walled space buzzing with a glittering, well-heeled crowd. Waiters circulated with trays of champagne and canapés. Edaora felt a familiar pang of imposter syndrome, the artist from Surelier amidst the collectors from Monaco. But Ken's hand was a steadying presence on the small of her back. He didn't leave her side. He introduced her simply and proudly. "This is Edaora Nwosu, a truly remarkable artist." He didn't define her by her relationship to him. He presented her as her own entity. And then, something remarkable happened. A well-known curator, a woman with a severe gray bob and sharp eyes, recognized Edaora's name. "The Edaora Nwosu? Your Makoko series was hauntingly beautiful. The use of light on the water." She began, and they fell into a deep technical discussion about composition and texture. Keen stood back, watching, a look of profound pride on his face. He didn't interrupt. He just observed, learning about her world through her own expertise. He was in his element, but she realized it wasn't the money or the status that made it so. It was the art. He listened intently as the artist being showcased explained his vision, asking insightful questions that went beyond, "What does it mean?" to "What challenges did you face with this medium?" He was not a passive observer. He was an engaged participant, and he kept pulling her into the conversation. "Eudora, you worked with a similar palette last year, didn't you? Or what's your take on this technique?" He was building a bridge showing everyone, and her, that she belonged here as much as anyone. A week later, it was her turn to introduce him to her world. It was the opening of a Friends collective show in a raw, gritty space in Yaba. The walls were exposed brick, the floor concrete, and the air smelled of spray paint and sweat. The crowd was young, vibrant, and loud, buzzing with creative energy. Keen arrived straight from the office, having swapped his suit jacket for a simple black linen shirt, the sleeves rolled up. He looked entirely out of place, a sleek panther in a room full of energetic cheetahs, but he embraced it with good humor. Eudora watched him. He didn't stand stiffly in a corner. He let her drag him from painting to installation, listening as her friends, their words tumbling out in excited, rapid-fire sentences, explained their work. He bought a piece from a struggling sculptor not out of pity, but because he genuinely liked the rough, emotional texture of it. Later, as they stood with bottles of cheap beer, surrounded by the deafening beat of an experimental DJ, he leaned down, his lips close to her ear. "This is incredible," he shouted over the music. "The energy here, it's alive. It's pure creation. You can almost taste it." He wasn't just being polite. He was genuinely fascinated. He saw the same passion here in this hot, crowded room that he saw in the boardrooms of his tech company, the drive to create something from nothing. The true test came at a charity gala a few nights later. This was the pinnacle of his social scene. A sea of diamonds, designer gowns, and air kisses. Eudora felt the distance between their worlds most acutely here. The conversations were a ballet of superficiality, discussions about vacations, shopping, and other people. She saw Keen transform. He became the billionaire CEO, moving through the room with an effortless, polished grace, shaking hands, exchanging pleasantries. He was good at it, but throughout the evening, his eyes would find hers across the crowded room. And in those glances, she saw a silent message. "This is a performance. You are my reality." During a quiet moment on a balcony overlooking the city lights, he found her taking a breath of fresh air. He came to stand beside her, his shoulder brushing hers. "Thank you for enduring that," he said quietly. "It's part of your world," she replied. "It's a very small, very noisy part," he corrected. He turned to face her, the city lights reflecting in his dark eyes. "All those people in there, and all I wanted to do was be in a quiet corner, hearing about the new canvas you're stretching. That," he said, his voice dropping to an intimate murmur, "is the universe I want to be in. Yours." In that moment, under the vast Lego sky, the glittering gala behind them felt insignificant. The merger of their worlds wasn't about her entering his or him entering hers. It was about them, together, choosing the best parts of each to create a new shared space. And Eudora knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, that she was falling deeply, irrevocably in love with the man behind the billionaire. The rhythm of their courtship was a thrilling syncopation of two different tempos. His was allegro, a whirlwind of meetings, international calls that ignored time zones, and decisions that shaped markets. Hers was andante, the patient, deliberate stroke of a brush, the slow layering of color and meaning. Yet, in the spaces they created for each other, the tempos merged into a perfect, harmonious duet. Their date that Friday was deliberately simple. A new Nollywood epic had taken the city by storm, and Eudora had mentioned wanting to see it. Keen, who hadn't set foot in a public cinema in over a decade, procured tickets immediately. He insisted on the full, authentic experience. They bought overpriced popcorn, smuggled in homemade chin-chin from Edora's purse, and laughed with the entire audience at the dramatic, over-the-top scenes. For 2 hours, they were just another couple in the dark, her hand tucked securely in his. When the credits rolled, They spilled out onto the bustling Adeniran Ogansanya street with the crowd, their spirits light, cheeks aching from smiling. The Lagos sky, which had been threatening all evening, finally made good on its promise. It didn't just rain. It unleashed a biblical deluge. One moment the air was thick with humidity. The next, fat, warm raindrops were exploding on the pavement like water balloons, quickly turning into a deafening, solid sheet of water. The crowd scattered, shrieking and laughing, diving for awnings and shop entrances. Ken's driver was stuck in the inevitable traffic snarl the rain had caused. His phone buzzed, a message estimating a 20-minute wait. Keen looked at Ada Ora, her eyes wide with amusement at the ferocity of the downpour. The corporate part of him thought of the logistics, the wait, the discomfort. The part of him that was being remade by her saw an opportunity. A brilliant, boyish grin spread across his face. "We're not that far from my car," he said, though not that far was a relative term in a near monsoon. "Keen will be drowned." Ada Ora laughed, but her eyes sparkled with the same madness. "What's a little water?" he challenged. He shrugged off his tailored linen jacket, a garment that cost more than her monthly rent, and held it over both their heads like a pathetic, utterly inadequate shield. Ready? It was a dare, and Ada Ora, who painted with the fury of a storm, was not one to refuse. She nodded, gripping her purse tighter. "Run," he yelled, and they did. They plunged into the warm, torrential rain, instantly soaked to the skin. His jacket was useless within seconds. The rain plastered her hair to her face and her dress to her body, and she laughed, a pure, unadulterated sound of joy that was swallowed by the roar of the storm. He held her hand tightly, his larger body trying to block the worst of the rain as they splashed through growing puddles, their shoes sloshing with water. They were CEOs and artists, billionaires and bohemians. None of it mattered. They were just two people, laughing and breathless, caught in the glorious, chaotic heart of a Lagos downpour. He pulled her under the scant shelter of a newspaper kiosk that was closed for the night, both of them gasping for air, dripping onto the dusty ground. They were a mess. He looked ridiculous, his expensive shirt transparent and clinging to his chest, his usually perfect hair a wet, messy curl on his forehead. She was wiping water from her eyes, her mascara giving her a faint, raccoon-like smudge that he found utterly enchanting. "Look at us," she giggled, wringing out a corner of her dress. "We're mad." Completely, he agreed, his chest heaving. But he wasn't looking at the rain, he was looking at her, at the way her laughter lit up her face, at the life that radiated from her even as she shivered slightly. The space under the kiosk was tiny, forcing them to stand close. The sound of the rain drumming on the corrugated iron roof was a thunderous intimacy, closing them off from the world. Their laughter slowly subsided, replaced by a sudden, palpable awareness. The air between them crackled, charged with something far more electric than the storm. He reached out and gently pushed a sodden strand of hair from her cheek. His touch was warm against her rain-cooled skin. Her breath hitched. His eyes, dark and intense, searched hers, asking a silent question. The world narrowed to this small, damp space. The honking of trapped cars faded. The city, for all its millions, contained only them. He saw the yes in her eyes before he moved. He leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. She swayed towards him, her eyes fluttering closed. The first kiss was tentative, a soft, questioning brush of his lips against hers. It tasted of rain and the faint sweetness of the chin-chin they'd shared. It was a spark. Then the spark caught fire. He deepened the kiss, one hand cradling the back of her head, the other settling on her waist, pulling her firmly against his soaked shirt. She responded eagerly, her hands coming up to rest on his chest, feeling the powerful, rapid beat of his heart beneath the wet fabric. It was not a polite kiss. It was a claiming, an affirmation, a silent conversation that said everything they hadn't yet voiced. It was passion and promise and the dizzying sensation of finding a home you never knew you were missing. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathless for a new reason. The rain was still pouring, but now it felt like a celebration, a baptism. He rested his forehead against hers, his eyes still closed. Adeora, he whispered, her name a prayer on his lips. She didn't trust her voice. She just smiled, a slow, radiant smile that started in her soul and reached her eyes. His phone buzzed again. The driver was close. He didn't move. He just looked at her, his thumb stroking her cheek. That, he said, his voice husky with emotion, was worth every second of the wait. He took her hand again, and they stepped back out into the rain. But this time they walked slowly, no longer running from the storm but moving through it together, hand in hand, their futures irrevocably intertwined by the water, the laughter, and the seismic, life-altering power of a first kiss. The kiss in the rain wasn't an end point. It was a catalyst. It dissolved the last remaining barriers of formality between them, replacing them with a thrilling, tender intimacy. They were now, unquestionably, a couple. And with that came the inevitable and for Keen, deeply significant next step, the family. "My mother wants to meet you," he said one evening as they shared a dessert on her studio floor, surrounded by the comforting smell of turpentine. He said it casually, but Adeora, now attuned to his nuances, heard the slight tension underneath. This was more than a simple introduction. In their culture, meeting the family was a declaration of serious intent. It was the weaving of a new thread into the intricate, unbreakable fabric of the family tapestry. "She does?" Adeora asked, putting down her spoon. "Are you sure? What if she—" She trailed off, 100 insecurities flashing through her mind. What if she thinks I'm not good enough? What if my world is too different? Keen took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "My mother is a very smart woman. She raised 5 children on a teacher's salary after my father passed. She can spot pretense from a mile away. All she will care about is that you make me happy." He smiled. "And you do." Profoundly. The Obi family home in Ikoyi was not the cold, intimidating mansion Adeora had half feared. It was a large, warm, bustling bungalow filled with the sound of laughter, overlapping conversations, and the irresistible aroma of Nigerian cooking. The furniture was comfortable and worn in places, and family photos covering every surface told a story of a journey from modest beginnings to immense success. Ken's mother, Mama Nkechi, was a regal woman with sharp, intelligent eyes and a warm smile. She greeted Adeora not with scrutiny, but with a curious, open warmth. "No, welcome, my dear," she said, taking both of Adeora's hands. "Keen has been telling me so much about the artist who finally made him look up from his phone." Her eyes twinkled. The Sunday lunch was a boisterous affair. Ken's siblings, their spouses, and a cacophony of nieces and nephews filled the dining room. Platters of jollof rice, fried plantains, muamua, and assorted meats covered the table. Adeora was initially overwhelmed, but she didn't retreat. When Mama Nkechi rose to bring more water from the kitchen, Adeora instinctively got up to help. "No, no, sit down, my dear. You are a guest," Mama Nkechi protested. "Please, Ma," Adeora said gently. "Let me help. My mother would disown me if I sat while my elder worked." It was a simple, respectful act. She followed Mama Nkechi into the kitchen not to impress, but because it was how she was raised. They talked not about Ken's wealth or her art, but about the best way to season egusi soup and the stubbornness of plantains that refused to ripen. Back at the table, she engaged Ken's younger sister, a medical student, about the challenges of her residency. She listened, rapt, as his older brother told a hilarious story about Ken's first failed business venture selling pure water as a teenager. She was simply herself, genuine, interested, and interesting. She fit. Keen watched her from across the table, his heart so full it felt like it might burst. He saw the exact moment his mother's initial curiosity solidified into genuine approval. It was when Adeora, laughing at a joke, reached over and casually squeezed Ken's hand, a gesture of such natural affection that it couldn't be faked. A week later, it was his turn to be tested. Adeora's family home in Surulere was a world away from Ikoyi. The building was a stack of bustling flats, the compound alive with the shouts of children playing football and the gossip of neighbors. The air was thick with the scent of suya spice and diesel. Adora's family was louder, more immediately expressive than his. Her mother, a formidable, joyful woman with a voice that carried, pulled Keen into a crushing hug the moment he stepped through the door. Her father, a retired civil servant with a thoughtful gaze, shook his hand with a firm, assessing grip. Her two young nephews immediately began climbing him like a tree. Keen, used to boardrooms and gala dinners, was initially shell-shocked by the beautiful, chaotic energy. But he did something extraordinary. He surrendered to it. He arrived bearing thoughtful gifts. A beautiful Georgetown for her father, a soft, expensive wrapper material for her mother, and toy robots that instantly made him a hero to the nephews. But the true test came after the meal of delicious, fiery pepper soup. The nephews challenged him to a game of Ludo. Without a moment's hesitation, Keen Obi, billionaire tech mogul, took off his suit jacket, loosened his tie, and sat cross-legged on the floor. He argued passionately over the roll of the dice, celebrated their victories with high fives, and groaned dramatically when he was sent back to start. He was, for an afternoon, just Auntie Ada's boyfriend who rolls badly. Adoora watched him, her heart swelling with a love so fierce it stole her breath. He wasn't condescending or awkward. He was trying. He was genuinely enjoying himself, laughing with her brothers, discussing politics respectfully with her father, and asking her mother for her recipe for coconut rice. Later, as they prepared to leave, her mother pulled her into the kitchen. "NNE," her mother said, using the affectionate term. She nodded towards the living room where Keen was patiently letting her nephews teach him a complicated handshake. "He is a good man. I see the way he looks at you, like you are the most important painting in the gallery." She cupped Adora's face. "He sees you. That is everything." Standing outside, waiting for his driver, Keen pulled her close. The sounds of Surrelir buzzed around them. That was He searched for the word. "Wonderful. Your family is amazing. They loved you," she said, resting her head against his chest. "The feeling is entirely mutual," he replied, kissing her hair. "I finally understand where you get your light from." Both families had given their silent, but unequivocal blessing. The portrait of their relationship was no longer just a sketch of two people. It was now a detailed, vibrant painting, rich with the colors and characters of their shared history, ready to be filled in with a future they would build together. Their love felt like a fortress, strong and sun-drenched, built on a foundation of shared laughter, mutual respect, and family blessings. But every fortress, no matter how strong, must withstand an assault. Theirs came not from a place of malice from within, but from a ghost from Ken's past. Her name was Chioma, elegant, razor-sharp, and polished to a high gloss. She was the daughter of a banking magnate and Ken's former fiancé. Theirs had been a merger discussed in the society pages long before it was a relationship, a union of two powerful dynasties that made perfect sense on paper. It had ended by all accounts because it made sense only on paper. There had been no fire, no laughter in the rain, no shared floor-sitting over dessert. Chioma had been abroad, nursing her wounded pride, when news of Ken's new, seemingly serious relationship began to filter through her social circles. The descriptions, an artist from Surrelir, were like a personal insult. She returned to Lagos with a mission, to reassess the situation and, if necessary, reassert what she saw as her rightful claim. The stage was a high-profile auction for a new music conservatory. It was exactly the kind of event Keen and Adoora were now navigating together. Adoora wore a stunning, backless gown of deep green that made her skin glow. Keen was dashing in a classic tuxedo, his arm a permanent, possessive fixture around her waist. They were happy, at ease in their bubble. Chioma found them during the cocktail hour. She was a vision in cream silk, her smile a perfectly calibrated weapon. "Kenechukwu," she purred, air-kissing near his cheek without actually making contact. "You look well. Country air must agree with you." It was a subtle dig, implying he'd been slumming it. "Chioma," Keen replied, his tone polite but cool. "This is a surprise. I didn't know you were back in Lagos." "Oh, one must always come back for the important things," she said, her eyes finally sliding to Adoora. looking her up and down with a practiced, dismissive sweep. "And who is this?" "This?" Keen said, his voice warming several degrees as he pulled Adaora closer. "Is my girlfriend, Adaora Nwosu. Adaora, this is Chioma Okeke, an old family friend." The label old family friend was a deliberate demotion, and Chioma's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Charmed, Chioma said, offering a limp hand. "Nwosu, I don't believe I know the name. Are you new to the island?" The condescension was masterful. It implied Adaora was an immigrant to her own city's elite circles. "My family is from Suralire," Adaora said smoothly, shaking the offered hand with a firmness that seemed to surprise Chioma. "I've been here all my life." "How lovely," Chioma replied, her tone suggesting it was anything but. "And what is it you do, Adaora?" Ken's assistants usually have such impressive backgrounds in finance or law. The implication that she might be staff was a calculated blow. Adaora felt a hot flush of anger but kept her composure. Keen opened his mouth to intervene, his expression darkening, but Adaora placed a gentle hand on his arm. "I'm a painter," Adaora said, her voice clear and steady. "I had a show at the Ashadi Gallery last month. Perhaps you saw it?" Chioma's smile was brittle. "Art. How creative. It must be so freeing not to be burdened by the pressures of the corporate world. Perfect little hobby." She turned her full attention back to Keen, effectively dismissing Adaora. "Darling, I simply must steal you for a moment. Daddy is desperate for your thoughts on the telecoms bill. You know how he values your opinion." It was a power play, pulling him back into their shared world of high-stakes business, a world from which Adaora was excluded. Keen didn't move. He looked at Chioma, and when he spoke, his voice was low, quiet, and carried a finality that was utterly chilling. "Whatever your father needs, he can call my office during business hours, Chioma. My only priority tonight is the beautiful woman on my arm. Now, if you'll excuse us." He didn't wait for a reply. He turned his back on her, a monumental snub in their social sphere, and guided Adaora towards their table. Adaora could feel the heat of Chioma's furious gaze burning into her back. She was quiet for a moment as they sat. The encounter had left a sour taste. Keen took her hand under the table. "I am so sorry," he said, his eyes earnest. "Her behavior was appalling." She wanted you back," Adaora stated, the truth of it settling heavily on her. "She wanted the idea of me back," Keen corrected. "The status, the partnership. She never wanted me, not the real me." He squeezed her hand. "What we have is not for sale, can't be acquired in a merger." She could never understand that. He looked at her, his gaze intense. "My world is wherever you are, Adaora. There is no your world and my world. There is only our world. And in our world, she is a ghost. Faint echo. You are my present and my future. There is no comparison." His words were a bomb, washing away the insecurity Chioma had tried to seed. He hadn't just defended her. He had publicly chosen her, unequivocally and without hesitation. The shadow of the past had loomed, but it found no purchase. Their fortress, built on a foundation of genuine love, hadn't just held. It had emerged stronger, the walls reinforced by his unwavering loyalty and her quiet, dignified strength. The ghost they both knew had been banished for good. The encounter with Chioma, rather than creating a rift, had fused them closer. Ken's unwavering defense was a testament Adaora carried in her heart, a shield against any lingering doubt. Their love felt like a finished, perfect piece. But Keen, the builder, the visionary, saw it not as an endpoint, but as a foundation for something even greater. He broached the idea one evening in her studio. He was leaning against her paint-splattered work table, watching her mix a particular shade of blue, a color that reminded him of the Lego sky just after the rain. "I have a proposition for you," he began, his tone casual but with an undercurrent of seriousness that made her look up from her palette. "Oh, should I be nervous?" she teased, wiping her hands on a rag. "I hope not." He pushed off the table and came to stand before her, taking her stained hands in his. The new OB Ventures headquarters. The one on the island. The lobby is a vast, empty space. 3 stories of blank white wall. They're about to start interior design, and the lead architect suggested a massive digital screen. Something with ever-changing corporate imagery. Edoora made a face. Cold. Impersonal. Exactly, he said, a smile touching his lips. I told him no. I told him the heart of the company shouldn't be a screen. It should be a soul. He paused, his dark eyes holding hers. I want you to create it. The words hung in the air, thick with turpentine and possibility. Edoora's breath caught. Keen. What? I want to commission you, Edoora Nwosu, to create the central artwork for the lobby of my new headquarters. A monumental piece. Something that everyone who walks into that building will see. Something that defines not just the space, but the spirit of the entire company. The magnitude of it was staggering. This wasn't a painting for his penthouse. This was a permanent public installation for the flagship building of one of Nigeria's most successful tech empires. The visibility, the prestige, it was the kind of commission that could define an artist's career. Keen, that's incredible, she stammered, her mind racing. But, are you sure? Isn't that nepotism? What will your board say? He laughed. I am the board, and it's not nepotism. It's brilliant curation. I've seen your work. I've lived with it. I know what you're capable of. This isn't a gift, Anya M., he said, using the Igbo term of endearment. This is a challenge. The biggest of your career. Do you accept? The artist in her, the ambitious, passionate core that he loved so much, roared to life. Fear was eclipsed by a surge of creative fire. She saw the wall, vast and blank, and her mind began to fill it with color, with form, with meaning. Yes, she said, her voice firming with conviction. Yes, I do. What followed was a collaboration that became the new centerpiece of their relationship. Evenings that were once spent at dinners or watching movies were now spent sprawled on the floor of his penthouse or her studio, surrounded by sketches, fabric swatches, material samples, and 3D renderings of the lobby space. They became partners in creation. He was her muse and her client, offering a unique perspective. The company is about the future, he'd say, pointing at one of her more abstract sketches. But it's a future built on Nigerian soil, on Nigerian spirit. How do we show that fusion? She'd ponder, then grab a new sheet of paper. What if? What if we use traditional Nigerian textiles? Akwit, aso oak, but deconstruct them. Layer them with circuitry patterns. Use materials that are both ancient and modern. Bronze castings alongside LED light. His eyes would light up. Yes, a dialogue between the handcrafted and the digital. The past informing the future. He didn't dictate, he inspired. He asked probing questions that pushed her conceptually. She, in turn, showed him a new way to see his own company, not as a cold entity of profit and loss, but as a living, breathing organism of human ambition and cultural pride. He loved watching her work. He'd often cancel late meetings just to sit quietly in a corner of her studio, sipping a drink and simply observing. He was mesmerized by the focus that settled on her face, the way she'd bite her lip in concentration, the graceful, sure movements of her hands as they brought a vision to life. He saw the passion, the sheer talent, and fell in love with her all over again, not just as his girlfriend, but as a master of her craft. The piece, which she titled Yulo, Home in Igbo, began to take shape. It was a towering, mixed-media tapestry of woven golden threads reminiscent of Akwit, intersecting with sleek, pulsing lines of fiber optic light. Embedded within were fragments of old motherboard's head saved from his first company, alongside traditional Nigerian pottery shards. It was a breathtaking metaphor. Technology and tradition, not at odds, but woven together into a new, stronger whole. One night, as she was putting the finishing touches on a detailed scale model, she looked over at him. He was asleep in the armchair. A sheaf of architectural plans slipped from his hand to the floor. In the soft light, he looked younger, peaceful. Her heart swelled with a love so profound it ached. This was more than a commission. It was his way of building a part of her into the very architecture of his life's work. It was a declaration, more powerful than any ring could yet be, that she was not apart from his world. She was becoming its heart. And in the quiet of the studio, she knew the piece she was creating was not just for his headquarters. It was the story of them. The pressure was immense. The scale model for Yulo was complete. The materials were being sourced, and the actual fabrication loomed, a monumental task that dominated Adeora's every waking thought. Simultaneously, Keen was navigating the final, frenzied stages of the headquarters construction. They were both stretched thin, their time together often spent hunched over blueprints, their conversations peppered with technical terms about load-bearing walls and tensile strength. Keen saw the tension in the set of her shoulders, the faint line of concentration that had taken up permanent residence between her brows. He missed her. He missed them, the easy laughter, the long, meandering conversations that had nothing to do with work. He decided to intervene. "Pack a bag," he said one Tuesday evening, walking into her studio. "Warm clothes, something you can hike in." Adeora looked up from a sample of fiber optic cable, her eyes glazed with focus. "What? Why?" "Keen, I have to finalize the vendor for the bronze casting by Thursday, and It's handled," he said calmly, taking the cable from her hands. "I've spoken to the project manager. Everything is on pause for 4 days." "You can't just pause an entire building project," she exclaimed, though a part of her thrilled at the thought. "I can," he said with a small, mischievous smile. "I'm the client, and the client needs a break. So does the artist. We're going to Obudu." 2 days later, the world of Lagos, with its noise, its pressure, its endless demands, fell away. The private plane gave way to a car that climbed and climbed, the air growing cooler and fresher with every turn. Then, the Obudu mountain resort unveiled itself. A breathtaking vista of rolling, emerald green hills shrouded in ethereal mist, a world of serene silence broken only by the calls of birds. Their suite was a luxurious cottage with a balcony that looked out over the seemingly endless valleys. The air was crisp and clean, scented with pine and damp earth. For the first few hours, they did nothing. They sat on the balcony, wrapped in sweaters, holding hands and watching the clouds weave through the mountains below. The silence between them was comfortable, restorative. The next morning, they embarked on a hike along one of the scenic trails. It was a world away from their usual pace. Here there was no rush. They stopped to admire a peculiar flower, to watch a monkey skitter through the trees, to simply breathe. Keen, usually so precise and driven, seemed to shed his corporate skin. He pointed out bird calls, told her stories about camping here as a boy with his cousins, his face animated with nostalgia. Adeora watched him, her heart full. This was the man she'd glimpsed under the billionaire exterior, the boy from Enugu who loved the earth and the sky. "It's so quiet here," she murmured as they reached a lookout point. The world spread out beneath them in a stunning tapestry of green and blue. "You can actually hear yourself think." "That's the point," he said, coming to stand behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and pulling her back against his chest. He rested his chin on her head. "In Lagos, the world is always shouting at you. Here, it whispers. And the whispers are what matter." They spent the days exploring. They swam in the infamous natural infinity pool, the cold water stealing their breath even as the view stole their hearts. They visited the cattle ranch, and Keen laughed until he cried watching Adeora tentatively try to milk a cow. In the evenings, they sat by the massive stone fireplace in the lodge, sharing a bottle of wine and talking, not about work but about everything else. Their childhood dreams, their fears, what they wanted their life to look like in 10, 20, 50 years. One evening, as the sun began to set, painting the sky in fiery hues of orange and purple, they stood on their balcony. The temperature was dropping, and a light mist began to roll in, cloaking the world in a soft, magical haze. Keen turned her to face him, his hands on her hips. His expression was serious, tender. "This," he murmured, his voice low and intimate, "this peace I feel with you, it's everything I never knew I was building towards." Adeora's eyes glistened. She knew what he meant. His entire life had been a relentless climb toward success, toward a summit head always defined in terms of achievement and acquisition. But here, in the quiet cool of the mountains, with her in his arms, he had found a different summit altogether. All the deals, the buildings, the money, he continued, shaking his head slightly. It was just noise, a distraction. You are the silence that gives it all meaning. You are my peace, Adeora. It was a deeper declaration than I love you. It was an acknowledgement that she was his sanctuary, his home. He wasn't just building a company. He was building a life, and she was its cornerstone. He kissed her then, a slow, deep kiss that tasted of cool mountain air and red wine and a future that stretched out as vast and beautiful as the view before them. In the heart of the misty mountains, far from the city that defined them, they found not an escape, but a deeper truth. Their love was the quiet, steady center that would make sense of all the noise, forever. They returned to Lagos 4 days later, not just refreshed, but realigned. Their bond fortified by the profound, whispering peace of the mountains. The return from the serene peace of Obudu to the controlled chaos of Lagos was jarring. But they returned different. A new, unshakable calm resided between them, a quiet understanding that acted as a buffer against the city's frantic energy. That calm was soon to be tested by the single most public moment of their relationship, the unveiling of Yulo. The new Obi Ventures headquarters was a marvel of glass and steel, a symbol of Nigeria's soaring ambition. Tonight, it was filled with the most powerful figures in business, politics, and society. Waiters glided through the crowd with trays of champagne. The air buzzed with conversation, and camera flashes popped like tiny stars. It was the kind of event that, months ago, would have filled Adeora with a sense of being an imposter. Tonight, she felt only a thrum of nervous excitement. She stood beside Keen, her hand tucked in the crook of his arm. She wore a gown Shed designed herself, a creation of deep indigo that echoed the woven threads of the artwork, with a single, striking stripe of gold circuitry pattern running from shoulder to hem. She was not just his date. She was the artist, and she was dressed the part. Keen, in a tailored black agbada, looked every inch the king of his domain. But his attention was solely on her. "Ready?" he murmured, his voice for her alone. She took a deep breath, squeezing his arm. "Ready." The moment arrived. The managing director gave a brief speech about innovation and the future. Then he handed the stage to Keen. Keen walked to the podium, the crowd's attention snapping to him. He spoke eloquently about the vision behind the building, about creating a space that inspired greatness. And then he paused, his gaze finding Adeora's in the crowd. "A building, however beautiful, is just a shell," he said, his voice deepening with emotion. "It is the spirit within that gives it life. For me, that spirit has always been about the fusion of our rich heritage with the boundless potential of the future. It is about remembering the soil from which we grew, even as we reach for the stars." He turned slightly, gesturing towards the massive wall shrouded in a black velvet drape. "I could have chosen a digital screen. I could have chosen a famous international artist. But I wanted something that spoke to the very soul of who we are. So, I commissioned a piece from one of Nigeria's most visionary artists. A woman who sees the world not as it is, but as it could be. A woman who has taught me that the most powerful code isn't written in binary, but in color, in texture, in heart." Adeora's heart hammered against her ribs. He was laying his soul bare for everyone to see. "Tonight," Keen continued, his voice ringing with pride, "it is my greatest honor to unveil not just a piece of art, but a piece of our soul. Yulo by Adeora Nwosu." At his signal, the drapes fell. A collective gasp rippled through the audience, followed by a moment of stunned silence, and then a wave of applause. The piece was breathtaking. The 3-story installation was a symphony of light and shadow, tradition and innovation. The warm, familiar glow of hand-woven golden aquite threads intertwined with the cool, futuristic pulse of blue and white fiber optics. The embedded fragments, a shard of ancient pottery here, a piece of salvaged circuit board there, caught the light, telling a story millennia in the making. It was powerful, intelligent, and deeply beautiful. People surged forward, their phones held aloft, murmuring in awe. Critics nodded appreciatively, already dissecting its meaning. But Ken's eyes were only on Adeora. He stepped down from the podium and walked through the crowd towards her, ignoring the hands reaching out to congratulate him. He stopped before her, took both her hands in his, and kissed them. The cameras went wild. "You did it," he whispered, his eyes shining. "It's perfect. You are perfect." The rest of the evening was a blur of congratulations, interviews, and conversations. Adeora was no longer Keen Obi's girlfriend. She was Adeora Nwosu, the artist. She held her own, speaking eloquently about her process, her inspiration, the dialogue between materials. She was in her element. At one point, she saw Chioma across the room, standing alone with a glass of champagne, a tight, perfunctory smile on her face. She looked at the monumental artwork, then at Keen, who hadn't left Adeora's side, his hand a constant, proud presence on the small of her back. Chioma's smile faltered, and she turned away, the ghost finally accepting her defeat. Later, as the crowd began to thin, Keen took the microphone one last time for a final thank you. He didn't talk about business or architecture. "They say I'm a builder," he said, his voice echoing softly in the vast lobby. "But this building, this art, it reminds me that the most important things we build are not made of steel and glass. They are built on connection, on trust, on love." He looked directly at Adeora, his love for her naked and undeniable for all to see. "Thank you all for sharing this night with us." The applause was thunderous. But for Adeora, the only sound that mattered was the steady beat of his heart as he pulled her into his side. The unveiling was over, but their masterpiece, the one they were building together, had only just been revealed to the world. The triumph of the unveiling settled into their lives like a warm, golden glow. Adeora's career exploded. Commission requests flooded her studio, and her prices tripled overnight. But more importantly, the public validation of her talent by the man she loved was a balm to her soul. They had built something magnificent together, and the world had borne witness. Keen watched her navigate her newfound fame with a quiet, proud awe. He had always seen her light. Now the whole world could see it too, and it made the decision he had already made in his heart feel even more urgent, more right. He planned it for weeks. He wanted it to be perfect, a reflection of them, meaningful, personal, and utterly unforgettable. He chose the date with care, the 1-year anniversary of their collision in the mall. He was uncharacteristically nervous that day. He canceled all his meetings, claiming a migraine, an excuse so ludicrous his assistant actually gasped. He spent the afternoon pacing his penthouse, rehearsing words in his head that kept tangling into a nervous mess. Adeora, meanwhile, was blissfully unaware. She'd been busy with a new series of paintings and had only a vague sense that they might go out for a nice dinner to celebrate their metaversary, as Shed jokingly called it. When he picked her up, he was dressed casually in dark jeans and a simple, perfectly fitted black shirt. He looked handsome and relaxed, though his eyes held a peculiar intensity. "Where are we going?" she asked, slipping her hand into his. "It's a surprise," he said, kissing her forehead. His heart was hammering so hard he was sure she could feel it. The car didn't go to a fancy restaurant. It drove, familiar route by familiar route, back to the Palms, Lecky. Adeora laughed. "Really? We're having dinner at the food court? I know I said I like surprises, but humor me," he said, his voice a little tight. He led her through the same gleaming corridors, their footsteps echoing. The mall was busy, but it felt like a dream sequence. The sounds muffled, the lights too bright. He walked with a purpose, his hand holding hers firmly. And then they were there, the exact spot, the polished marble floor where a basket of fruit had once scattered. It looked utterly ordinary. Adeora looked around, a fond, nostalgic smile on her face. "A whole year," she said, shaking her head. "It feels like yesterday and a lifetime ago." "It was the best day of my life," Keen said, his voice low and serious. He turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. His palms were slightly damp. He took a deep breath. A year ago, I was a man who thought he had everything. I was rushing through my life, blind to anything that wasn't on a spreadsheet. And then I literally bumped into you. He smiled, a little shakily. I was so embarrassed. I just ruined your day. But you laughed. You made a joke. And in that moment, something shifted. My entire world, which had only ever made sense in black and white, suddenly exploded into color. Tears began to well in Adeora's eyes. She could feel what was coming, a seismic shift in the air around them. You taught me how to see beauty in the mess, he continued, his voice gaining strength, his eyes never leaving hers. You taught me that the most valuable things aren't acquired. They're built, with patience and trust and love. You are my muse, my peace, my home. You are the most beautiful, fortunate accident of my life. He gently released her hands. Then, to her utter astonishment, he walked a few steps to a small kiosk nearby, a vendor selling fresh fruit. He spoke quietly to the young man, who grinned and handed him a single, perfect, ruby-red strawberry. He walked back to her, holding the berry between his thumb and forefinger. Shoppers were beginning to stop and stare, sensing a scene unfolding. Keen got down on one knee right there on the polished floor. The world narrowed to just his face, looking up at hers, filled with so much love and vulnerability it took her breath away. He held up the strawberry. Our story began with a fruit, he said, his voice clear and strong, echoing just enough in the atrium. Let it continue with a ring. With his other hand, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, black velvet box. He opened it. Nestled inside was a ring of breathtaking beauty. The band was platinum, sleek and modern. But the centerpiece was not a solitary diamond. Instead, a cluster of paved diamonds was artfully arranged to form a tiny, perfect strawberry, with a single, heart-shaped ruby at its center. A sob escaped Adeora's lips. Her hands flew to her mouth. It was so utterly them. Adeora Nwosu, Keen said, his eyes glistening. You are the color in my world, the muse to my soul. Will you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife? Will you build a life, a family, a forever with me? Tears streamed down her face, happy, disbelieving tears. The mall, the people, the noise. It all faded into a distant hum. There was only him, her billionaire, her artist, her love. The man who had seen her, truly seen her, from the very first moment. She dropped to her knees in front of him, not caring about her dress, not caring about anything. She framed his face with her hands. Yes, she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Yes, Kenichuku Obi. 1,000 times, yes. A cheer erupted from the gathering crowd. Ken's face broke into a radiant, relieved smile. He slid the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, and then he kissed her, a deep, passionate kiss that held the promise of a lifetime. As they broke apart, laughing and crying, he popped the strawberry into her mouth. She tasted the sweet, familiar juice, a perfect circle closing and a glorious new beginning opening before them. Their love story, which had begun with a clumsy accident, was now a deliberate, dazzling choice. And it was only just beginning. The diamond and ruby strawberry glittered on Adeora's finger, a constant, dazzling reminder that her life was now a fairy tale. But before the white wedding of her dreams, there was a deeper, more foundational ceremony to be observed. The traditional wedding, the Igbanku. This was not for the pages of a society magazine. This was for the soil from which they'd grown, for the families that had raised them, for the ancestors who would bear witness. The venue was not a glittering ballroom, but the compound of Adeora's family home in Surulere. It was transformed. Brightly colored canopies in vibrant shades of orange, green, and gold, the Obi family colors, shielded the guests from the sun. The air, thick with the familiar Lagos humidity, was also thick with something else. The irresistible, soul-warming aroma of Nigerian food. Massive pots simmered over open fires, tended by aunties and family friends, their laughter ringing out as they stirred jollof rice, fried plantains, and prepared mountains of mwamwa and ofada stew. The sound was not a string quartet, but the explosive, joyful rhythm of the igba and ekwe drums, their beat so primal it vibrated in your chest. The guest list was not a who's who of Lagos society, but a who's who of their lives. Childhood friends, former teachers, neighbors who had watched Adaora grow up, and relatives from villages across the east. Adaora was a vision. She was wrapped in a magnificent George wrapper of deep crimson and gold, its fabric rich and heavy. An intricately beaded blouse, covered her arms, and her head was adorned with a gorgeous geli tied into a masterpiece that framed her face. The gold jewelry that draped her neck and wrists was not just for show. It was heirloom pieces, lent by her mother and grandmother, heavy with history and blessing. Her makeup was subtle, letting the natural radiance of her joy shine through. Keen and his family arrived not in a quiet sedan, but in a jubilant, noisy procession. The men were resplendent in Iziagu lion-head shirts of matching green and gold, while the women were gorgeous in their own coordinated George wrappers and head ties. They were preceded by dancers and musicians, their arrival an announcement of joyful intent. The ceremony was a vibrant, symbolic negotiation, a play-acted drama steeped in tradition. Ken's family spokesman presented their case. They had come for the precious jewel of the Nwosu family. Adaora's family, led by a witty uncle, playfully protested, listing all the reasons they could not possibly part with their daughter: her beauty, her talent, her good heart. Ken's mission was to find his bride, who was hidden among a group of beautifully dressed women, all veiled with identical scarves. With a crowd of his friends and brothers egging him on, he moved from woman to woman, his heart pounding. When he finally found her, lifting the veil to reveal her smiling, tear-filled eyes, a roar of approval went up from the crowd. He had found his heart. Then came the pivotal test, the presentation of the palm wine. A cup was handed to Adaora. The drums fell silent. All eyes were on her. Her task was to search the crowd for Keen, kneel before him and offer him the wine. If he drank it, it signified her acceptance of him as her husband, and his of her as his wife. She moved through the crowd, the cup held steady in her hands. She found him easily, his face a beacon of love and pride. She knelt before him, her head bowed slightly. The moment was profound, silent, and heavy with meaning. He took the cup from her, his fingers brushing hers, and drank deeply. The compound erupted. The deal was sealed. The party that followed was a feast of epic proportions. The music kicked back in, louder and more joyful than before. People danced, their moves energetic and free. Money sprayed in the air, sticking to sweaty, happy foreheads. Children weaved through the crowds. Keen and Adaora were pulled into the center, dancing together, his formal steps from countless galas forgotten in favor of the joyous, rhythmic movement of his people. At one point, soaked in sweat and happiness, Keen pulled Adaora close. "This," he shouted over the drums. "This is the real thing. This is joy." She nodded, her heart too full for words. This was not a performance. This was a roots-deep commitment, witnessed and blessed by their community. It was loud, it was hot, it was messy, and it was the most perfect day of her life. It was the foundation upon which their entire future would be built, a foundation of culture, family, and a love as strong and enduring as the ancient traditions that had just bound them together. The white wedding would be for them. The traditional affair, was for everyone who had made them who they were. A week after the vibrant, earth-shaking joy of the traditional wedding, a different kind of magic descended. The setting shifted from the bustling, familiar compound in Surulere to the serene, breathtaking vistas of Obudu Mountain Resort. They had returned to the place where he had called her his peace, to exchange their vows under the vast open sky. The contrast was deliberate and beautiful. Where the Igbankur was a celebration of community and heritage, the white wedding was an intimate declaration of their personal modern love, a love that honored its roots while soaring towards its own unique future. The ceremony was held in the resort's lush gardens, at the very lookout point where they had watched the mist roll in. Chairs upholstered in soft ivory were arranged in a semicircle before a simple, elegant archway adorned with cascading white orchids and hints of green fern. The air was cool and carried the sweet, clean scent of mountain flowers and damp earth. In the distance, the rolling green hills of Cross River State stretched out to the horizon, a silent, majestic witness. The guests, a smaller gathering of their closest family and friends from both ceremonies, arrived wrapped in shawls and light jackets, their chatter hushed by the awe-inspiring beauty of the location. The atmosphere was one of reverent anticipation. Keen stood under the arch with his best man, his brother. He looked incredibly handsome in a custom-tailored cream-colored agbada made of the finest Italian linen, its simple elegance a testament to understated power. But his usual composure was gone. He shifted his weight, his eyes constantly flicking towards the path where she would appear, his nerves palpable. He was a man about to receive the greatest gift of his life. The music began, not a traditional processional, but a soft, melodic piece played on a violin and a cello. First, the bridesmaids walked down the grassy aisle, dressed in flowing gowns of a soft sage green. Then the flower girls, scattering petals from native mountain flowers. And then the music swelled. Everyone rose, and there she was, Eudora. A collective, soft gasp rippled through the crowd. She was a vision of ethereal beauty. Her gown was a masterpiece of modern elegance and subtle tradition. It was crafted not from bulky satin, but from layers of delicate ivory silk that floated around her as she moved. The neckline was elegant, the back daringly low. But the true magic was in the details. Embroidered along the hem and creeping up the bodice in a delicate, almost secretive pattern, was the same geometric design from the aquite cloth that had inspired Yulo. It was a whisper of her heritage, woven into the fabric of her future. She carried a bouquet of white orchids and deep red strawberries on the vine, a playful, perfect nod to their beginning. But all eyes were on her face, which was radiant with a joy so profound it seemed to light the entire garden. On her arm was her father, his chest puffed with pride, his eyes glistening with tears. Keen felt his breath catch in his throat. His own eyes welled up, and he made no attempt to hide it. She was walking towards him, and she was every dream he never dared to have, made flesh. In that moment, the billionaire, the builder, the mogul was simply a man humbled by love. She reached him. Her father placed her hand in Ken's. His grip was firm, warm, a little shaky. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it, a silent promise. The ceremony was personal. They had written their own vows. When it was Ken's turn, he spoke not to the crowd, but to her, his voice low and thick with emotion. Eudora, he began, a year ago I thought I knew what success was. I thought it was something you built with your mind and your will. You taught me that it's something you build with your heart. You are my greatest success. I vow to cherish that success every day of my life. I vow to always be your sanctuary, as you are mine. I vow to always bend down to pick up the fruits with you, to always find the beauty in the mess, and to love you more with every sunrise. Tears streamed freely down Eudora's cheeks. When she spoke, her voice was clear and strong, filled with love. Keen, you were the most beautiful interruption of my life. You crashed into my world and brought all your color with you. I vow to never let our canvas go blank. I vow to always challenge you, to inspire you, and to love the humble, brilliant man from Enugu as much as I love the titan who builds empires. I vow to be your home always. Then came the rings. The officiant spoke the traditional words. Keen reached into his pocket and produced the ring box. But instead of a simple band, he revealed the platinum ring with the tiny, perfect strawberry crafted from rubies and diamonds. Another soft gasp from the crowd. He slid it onto her finger, a perfect, sparkling circle closing around the most important promise he would ever make. You may kiss your bride. He didn't need to be told twice. He cupped her face and kissed her. A kiss that was both tender and passionate. A kiss that held the memory of their first kiss in the rain and the promise of thousands more to come. The garden erupted in cheers and applause. They turned to face their loved ones, hand in hand, man and wife. The mist began to roll in over the hills, just as it had that first evening, wrapping them in a soft, blessed blanket. They had honored the past in Surulere. Here, in the clouds, they had just built their future. Together, the reception was a symphony of elegance and warmth, held in a grand, clear-sided marquee that offered a panoramic, 360-degree view of the Obudu Hills, now painted in the soft, hazy palette of twilight. Thousands of tiny fairy lights twinkled from the ceiling, mimicking the stars beginning to pepper the sky above. Long tables, dressed in crisp ivory linen, were adorned with stunning centerpieces. Lush arrangements of white orchids, green succulents, and, nestled within the foliage, clusters of ripe, perfect strawberries. The air hummed with laughter and the clink of glasses. The formalities of the day had melted away, leaving behind a pure, unadulterated celebration. Keen and Adaora, now Mr. and Mrs. Obi, moved through their guests, their hands permanently linked. They were a portrait of radiant joy, accepting hugs and well wishes, their smiles seemingly permanent. After a delicious fusion dinner that blended continental cuisine with subtle Nigerian flavors, it was time for the speeches. Ken's best man, his younger brother, told embarrassing and hilarious stories of Ken's childhood clumsiness, much to the crowd's delight. Adaora's maid of honor, her sister, spoke of her fierce talent and bigger heart. Then it was Ken's turn. He stood, tapping his glass gently. The room fell into an expectant hush. He looked out at the faces of everyone they loved, all gathered in this one beautiful place. His gaze finally settled on Adaora, who looked up at him with so much love in her eyes it made his throat tight. "They call me a builder of empires," he began, his voice calm and clear, carrying easily in the quiet space. "And I suppose I am. I've built companies. I've built towers of glass and steel that scrape the Lagos sky." He paused, his eyes never leaving hers. "But my greatest acquisition was not a company. It was a moment of clumsiness." A warm wave of laughter rolled through the tent. "My most valuable asset is not on any spreadsheet. It's her heart." He nodded towards Adaora, whose tears began to flow again, happy and free. "And the masterpiece I am most proud of," he continued, his own voice growing thick with emotion, "that is not made of steel and glass. It is the life we begin building today." He raised his glass. "So let's raise a toast, not to empires but to love, not to acquisitions but to accidents, and to the beautiful, messy, incredible masterpiece of us. To my wife, Adaora." The toast was echoed by everyone in the room, a thunderous, heartfelt "to Adaora" that seemed to shake the tent. Then it was time for their first dance. The opening chords of their song, a smooth, soulful blend of highlife and jazz they'd chosen together, filled the air. Keen led her to the center of the dance floor, a small space cleared under a canopy of lights. He took her in his arms, one hand holding hers, the other resting firmly on the small of her back, right where the secret Akwit pattern was embroidered into her gown. They began to move. It wasn't a performative dance. It was a conversation, a slow, intimate sway that spoke of whispered secrets in the rain, of quiet evenings in her studio, of a profound peace found in the mountains. He whispered something in her ear, and she threw her head back and laughed, the sound pure and joyful. He spun her gently, the silk of her dress flaring out before he pulled her back close, against his heart. As other couples joined them on the dance floor, the party truly began. The music shifted, the beat picking up, infusing the tent with infectious energy. The DJ masterfully blended Afrobeats with classic party anthems. Ken's mother, a vision in gold, pulled a surprised but delighted Adaora into a lively dance, their movements a joyful celebration of a new daughter officially welcomed into the family. Later, under the pretext of getting some air, Keen led Adaora outside, away from the music and the lights. The night was cool and utterly silent but for the distant chirping of crickets. The sky was a vast, black canvas awash with countless stars. He stood behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, pulling her back against his chest just as he had that first evening here. They looked out at the dark, sleeping hills. "It's perfect," she whispered, leaning her head back against his shoulder. Everything is all perfect. It is, he agreed, kissing her hair. But this is just the beginning, Anya M. This is the unveiling. She turned in his arms to face him. What's next? He smiled, a slow, happy smile that reached his eyes. Life. Messy, beautiful, ordinary, extraordinary life. We'll build our home. We'll argue about paint colors. We'll host chaotic family Sundays. We'll travel the world. We'll create. We'll probably have another fruit-related disaster or two. She laughed, the sound echoing softly in the vastness. We'll build our own masterpiece, he murmured. Not on a canvas, not in a lobby, but a life. Together. He kissed her then, under the infinite starry sky, surrounded by the whispers of the mountains that had witnessed their love's deepest promises. The music from the reception was a faint, joyful pulse in the distance, a celebration of the first chapter of a story that was far from over. Their love story, which had begun with a clumsy accident, was now a deliberate, dazzling, and forever evolving work of art. And they, together, were the artists,